All right. Hello, everybody. Today we are talking about the ecology of human performance, and this will be week 5 of your online content. And what I'm going to have you do today is just watch this brief video. It's going to be about 10 to 12 minutes long, and from there you will be instructed at the end what to do to answer the questions on the forum. So the ecology of human performance. Today's objectives, we're going to analyze, synthesize, and apply the EHP model, and then talk about how we can apply the EHP model as a theory that underlies OT practice, and compare and contrast EHP to other occupation-based models. We're also going to discuss a little bit about how the EHP was developed. In fact, we're going to do that first. Our key theorists for the EHP are Winnie Dunn, Katana Brown, and Anne McGuigan, who were faculty members at the University of Kansas in 1994. And the whole idea behind the EHP was that they wanted something that was unique to occupational therapy but broadly applicable. So they wanted to address the complexities of context. They felt that the model of human occupation was great for discussing all those different aspects of the person, but it didn't address all the complexities that go into the context. They also wanted to expand that concept of context and look at all its different aspects. They also wanted to build an interdisciplinary model that would draw on the social science theory. So rather than have terms that people couldn't understand or didn't know how to relate to, they wanted to use terms that would be readily accessible to everybody, and so that this model would make sense across the professions and could be used broadly. So what do you mean by ecology? What in the world is ecology? When we hear the word ecology, we think green things, we think saving the earth. But what ecology means is the interrelationships of organisms and their environments. So we can see how that's important for some of the things that we talk about when we talk about ecology and Earth Day and those sorts of things. We want to help the organisms on this planet live in harmony with the planet. So occupational therapists are concerned about the interrelationships, in particular of humans, and the context that surround them, and the effect of these relationships of the humans and the context on their performance, specifically their occupational performance. So the context includes 4 different things, and notice that they use the words context and environment interchangeably in this model. So whereas in some other models they can mean different things, in this model they mean pretty much the same thing. Those words are used interchangeably. Again, they were trying to help this model be user-friendly, to be accessible to a lot of people, so they didn't want to make the definitions too complex. So physical is anything you can touch and feel and that is a part of your physical environment. Temporal is all the temporal aspects of our environment. We deal with clocks, we deal with days, we deal with time issues, we deal with holidays and these other socially constructed views of time. And this is very important in this model on how people relate to time. What's more important to you, keeping an appointment on time or being present with the person that's right in front of you? And as if you've ever traveled in another country, sometimes the people are much more important than the time schedule, and so things don't always go according to a particular schedule. And those temporal aspects are one of the things that this model directly addresses. They also address the social importance, the important pieces of relationships and interactions and social structures that people are involved in, and all that is part of the context and environment as well. And then, of course, the cultural, anything about the culture that impacts the person, looking at differences in culture, looking at aspects of culture that cause a person to act in certain ways. And so those are some important aspects of this model. There are 4 main constructs to this model. The first is the person. And again, simplified, a person, when we're looking at what's going on with them and how we're going to assess them, we look at their skills and abilities. We're not looking at 3 different subsystems or anything like that. We're just looking at what skills and abilities this person brings to the table for performance. Context, again, we're looking at the physical, social, cultural, and temporal aspects of the context in which that person is embedded. Task. Now, they do not use the word occupation in the ecology of human performance. They use the word task. Now, a task can be a little tiny, like what we would call an activity, or it can be a larger task such as performing your job. But a task is some sort of an objective set of behaviors that's needed to accomplish a goal. So that goal might be getting dressed for school, that goal might be completing a dissertation, and there are different complex sets of tasks or sets of behaviors that are part of that task. And then performance is what a person actually does. And that performance is limited by a person's performance range. How many things are actually available for this person to do, and what limits that performance range for this person? What makes it possible for one person to have a larger performance range than another person? And that's one of the things that this model talks about. So here are a couple of key concepts for this model as well. The first is transactional contextualism. So the person affects and is affected by the environment or the context in which they live. And the person constructs themselves in that context. So let's consider this for just a minute. This is an example that is common to maybe quite a few of us. I'm an Indiana girl. I grew up in Indiana my whole life. And although there are a fair number of lakes in Indiana, I did not live on a lake. And I didn't live near any mountains because I'm in Indiana too. So there are several things that I never learned to do when I was growing up. A couple of which are water ski and downhill ski, okay, just for example. Now, my performance range in water skiing and downhill skiing are limited by the context in which I grew up, in part. Now, I could have gone to Colorado and learned to ski, but it's just something I never did. And I never really built a construction of myself as a skier because I didn't have that opportunity, and I don't feel like I'm lacking anything. Now, if I suddenly moved out to Colorado and all my friends and all my neighbors and all my coworkers and everybody's going skiing and I don't know how to ski, I might feel like a failure because everybody else is skiing and I'm not. So my construction of myself changes because of that transaction with the environment. Okay, now that's a really simple example, but you can see how that can really impact somebody. Say someone gets a lot of self-worth and a lot of self-identity from their employment, and then something happens to them that they're no longer able to participate in that employment, but maybe there's something else that they can do. They have to reconstruct themselves. And that's a very important key concept for this model, that transactional contextualism. Another key concept that you'll see in other occupation-based models as well is environmental press. And that's that different environments force different behaviors. Not so much different from what we were talking about earlier, that I don't downhill ski because I don't live near a mountain, but that press to accomplish something is oftentimes what's in front of you from the environment. So the first, transactional contextualism, talks about creating that sense of self. The second, environmental press, talks about the need to accomplish, the need to adapt to the environment that's going on around you. And then again, that person's concept of competence is affected by that environmental press. Do I feel like I can write a paper? Does that matter if I work in an environment where I don't have to write papers? For my job now, yes, it's important. When I was working in the clinic, not as much that I could actually write a paper. But did I need to be able to write a patient handout? Absolutely. Did I need to be able to write a PowerPoint for presenting to my coworkers? Absolutely. So the context and my ability to be competent are dependent. Okay, so there's that press of the environment causing me to do certain things. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit maybe in class about how the new context of a grad school environment impacted your ability, or how did you feel environmental press as a result of that? Okay, so key concepts. The person-environment interactions are nonlinear. They are dynamic, so they can go back and forth. They don't have to go according to a set line of things, okay? They can interact and go back and forth, kind of like a piece of dandelion fluff, less like a timeline, okay? They are very complex, but they're also self-organizing. So if you looked at a dandelion fluff under a microscope, it looks complex just to look at it with your eyes, but when you look at it under a microscope, you can see all the pieces of it, and you can understand how it's organized. Same way with the person-environment interactions. They do organize themselves by working things out with each other, and it's something that we can map. It's something that we can look at as OTs and that we can facilitate. So how does the ecology of human performance model support social justice? So let's think about this for a minute. If this model is all about the environmental context and its importance in human performance, what happens if we have a context that doesn't support performance? Okay? Think about little Dylan from the lifespan frame of reference and the case study that we did that day. Think about how Dylan is perfectly able to do everything he needs to do in an environment that was built for him at home. He can turn the doorknobs. He can get around the house on his skateboard. He can play with his brothers and sisters. He can feed himself. He can do all the things that he needs to do within that context. What happens if he goes to the playground or to the library, or he wants to go ride bikes, or he wants to take part in a sport? Do those environments support his ability to perform? And is he disabled, or is the environment causing that disability with him? So social justice, or occupational justice, says that built environments should not limit a person's occupational performance. And that's one of the things that occupational therapists often work toward. And this is one of the models that if we're looking at that for a particular person, this is a great occupation-based model to use. Okay, so in class, we're going to look at the visual model a little bit more. Right now, we're simply going to page through these. This one just shows the person within their context, the tasks available to them, and that actually completing those tasks is performance. This shows the performance range. We'll talk about that a little bit more. This is our clusters of tasks that comprise roles. This is a limited performance range, and again, we'll talk about all these in class. Right now, I just want you to get a look at the models. This is what happens when the context is limited, that can also limit performance range. And here are some intervention strategies, which is what I wanted to get to, because this is what I'm going to have you do today. I'm going to have you, in your lab groups, communicate with each other. You can communicate by email, you can communicate on the forums, but what I want you to do is for each person in your group to select a different strategy, okay, and respond to these questions on the forum. And then you can reply and respond to each other. I want everybody to complete at least 2 posts after they've done their own posting. So these are the questions you're going to answer. For whom would this strategy work best? Give an example. Make up a case study, or make up a, use something from the textbook. This would work well for someone like this, okay? What's the focus of your particular strategy? What is it? What is this strategy all about? What is its intention, okay? Who are some of the theorists behind this particular strategy? And you can look in your textbook for that. How does this strategy match the OT practice framework? Now, if you take a look, this is going to sound really familiar because you might remember intervention approaches from the OT practice framework, and you can go straight to the OT practice framework, find where these were taken from. Now you can start to see that a little bit of theory has been infused, a lot of theory has been infused into the OT practice framework. Show how they line up. What does it say in the OT practice framework about the approach that you've selected? And then give an example of using this treatment strategy. So for that, you might go back to that case study and just really briefly say, we would alter the context for this person so that they can play on the slide at the playground, if we were doing Dylan. So that's just an example. And I'll let you do that, and I will see you in class. Thanks.